In the cherry blossom season, two girls cut their fingers and joined their blood as they made a vow of sisterhood. They believed that the bond of sisterhood was something entirely different from the relationships found in a typical family. The elder one then told the younger one not to cry anymore, assuring her that she would now be her older sister. The scene then shifts to a guild where people are discussing the giants. A boy mentions that he was familiar with them, rough, savage, and equally crude. He describes them as an ignorant and intellectually stunted species. A man in the guild agrees, saying that this was a common belief among the people. He then advises the boy to keep such opinions to himself, as there are those who would not take kindly to them. The boy wonders if this was what most people believed, and thinks the man was implying it was common sense. He asks the man not to tell him he truly believes the nonsense they are being fed. The ridiculous idea that giants are a race of brave, just, and proud warriors. The boy scoffs at the story of how the giants once waged war against the gods, dismissing it as an ancient fairy tale. In the boy's view, the giants were nothing more than dim-witted brutes. Their name had become a slur, used to describe those who were out of touch with the times. They were as cowardly as they were greedy, willing to do anything for a little money, no matter the cost. Given all this, what more could be said about such creatures? The man mentioned that he wouldn't speak further about the giants, and a while ago they had gone near the quarry, where hunters had come to track them. Diaz smirked, and the man suggested that the boy must be joking. The boy responded, saying it was about an ancient ice dragon from over 200 years ago, which was why an apostle knight like himself had come all the way from the capital. At that moment, a girl with only one arm entered and excused herself, saying she had completed her task. The boy looked at her, wondering if she was a one-armed woman. The girl asked the man if she needed to provide any further proof. The man replied that if she said it was done, then it was fine. The boy noticed a crystal the girl had placed on the table and asked if it was an ice dragon's crystal. Should he take that to mean that she was an adventurer who had just stolen a mark on them? The girl then asked the man who the boy was. The man revealed that the boy was a knight who had come from the capital to slay the dragon, and apparently some high-ranking minister had passed the job on to them. He then suggested they keep the information between themselves. The girl acted gently, lifting her dress slightly, and agreed, saying that although it wasn't her intention, the reality was that she had stolen the crystal. She asked if she had done something wrong. Then, acting cute, she asked for his forgiveness. He replied that if there was anything to apologize for, it was for having been in the wrong. He felt as though she carried herself like a noble, perhaps even a foreign princess, but then he noticed her tattered dress and, intrigued, moved closer to her, asking if she had been summoned from another world. He recalled that those who met with accidents in their own world often found themselves transported to a different one. She wondered about this, and he, realizing his manners, quickly introduced himself. He was Nathaniel Diaz, a servant of the Holy Orthodox Church and a member of the 12 Apostles, serving as one of its knights. He continued, having heard that people from other worlds were often granted great power by the goddess. If he might ask, and he hopes this doesn't sound strange, what was the nature of her power? She looked at him curiously, and then explains that she had declined the offer of such power because she believed cheating was wrong, and one must never be unfair. Diaz laughed, calling it a joke. He asked if there was really anyone who would turn down the blessing of the gods. And if it was true, then how was she capable of taking down that ice dragon? And wasn't it both she and her boss who were too cruel, constantly playing tricks on him? He recalled the earlier conversation about the crude and slow-witted giants, shaking his head in disbelief. The man was shocked and asked if she was serious. The girl drew a knife and pointed it at Diaz, demanding that he take his words back. Giants value their pride above all else, she said, and she can't overlook the insult he just spoke. Diaz, glancing at her from the corner of his eye, remained calm, and the man quickly begged him to apologize. Diaz replied that it was a poor idea to point a blade at a knight, warning her that she might end up getting hurt. Just then, another knight appeared and lifted her by the wrist. Commenting on how light she was, Diaz then remarked that it was no way to treat a lady, and he asked about the giant's pride. Suddenly, the knife dropped, its handle tied with the bell that hung from the girl's hand. At that moment, a giant broke through the bar's entrance, asking if the girl was alright. The girl apologized for the late introduction, and explained they were from the Kyogoku clan. Her name was Hanako, and the giant girl with her was her younger sister, Ellis. Ellis was known as the smallest giant among their clan. Hanako then asked if she should answer Diaz's question about the giant's pride. The man who had been behind the counter urged Hanako to wait. He explained that they had no ill intentions and did not mean harm to anyone, asking her to stop for his sake. Ellis nodded, agreeing with the man. He's right, she said. Let's just end this here. It's true that giants value their pride, but those who are truly just can never forget to show mercy to the weak. As they were leaving the building, the girl asked if they could let them off the hook, or at least allow her to fight in their place. Hanako agreed, recognizing it was Ellis's decision and an act of mercy. Setting that aside, Diaz had mentioned earlier that they had come from the capital, and asked if he had heard of someone named Hideko Junko, or failing that, a clan of giants known as the Gorm. When Diaz asked who they were, Hanako replied that they were Ellis's real kin. Both Hanako and Ellis were searching for members of their family from whom they had been separated. Although all the knights and Diaz had been injured, Diaz brushed it off, telling her that neither name was familiar to him. He apologized, saying he couldn't be of more help. Hanako remarked that it was unfortunate, then turned to the man and told him that they would pick up their reward another time. She added that he was free to deduct any repair cost as needed. The man agreed, and Hanako and Ellis left the building. The other knights called out to Diaz, and in a fit of anger, he crushed one of the man's hands, frustrated by Hanako's actions. Meanwhile, Hanako and Ellis walked through the town. Ellis turned to her sister and said it would be better to stay calm and avoid getting into dangerous situations like that. Hanako replied that she had learned from Ellis that giants value their pride. Ellis confirmed this, but before she could say more, Hanako added that she was a sister of Ellis, and it was natural for her to follow the path of pride as a giant would. Ellis agreed, but as she was about to respond, Hanako interrupted her, asking her to stop slouching and walk properly with a narrow gait. Ellis sighed and agreed, admitting that she often wondered if there was any real point in doing so. For someone her size, such things seemed unnecessary. Hanako, however, stopped the conversation, telling her that manners maketh the man, and besides, wasn't it only natural for Ellis to follow her example? After all, Ellis was her little sister. Ellis laughed at that and then straightened up, but Hanako immediately pointed out that her posture was still poor. As Ellis adjusted herself, Hanako continued, saying that calling the giants slow and crude was a misunderstanding. After all, Ellis had been quick to come to her aid, and graceful in doing so. Ellis looked at her sister and denied it, saying it wasn't like that at all. Meanwhile, the knights arrived at a place that had been shattered. There, they presented an animal to a giant and told him that they had a job for him. The giant lifted the animal and began to eat it, remarking that it wasn't about family, but about clans. Giants called each other kin through their clans. Diaz, observing this, noted that it was similar to the role the giant woman played in their family dynamics. Diaz asked if that was the case and whether he had wounded the pride of the giant. The giant responded by asking who cared about pride, then told Diaz to just bring more gold and meat. Diaz, pinching his nose due to the smell, agreed to do so. One of his friends mentioned that the giants were a very proud race. The giant replied that he was merely a stray and that it had nothing to do with him. He had no kin or clan, a stray wasn't even considered a giant, but rather nothing. The scene then shifted to Hanako and Ellis, who were in a stable. Ellis, laying down, relaxed, had remarked that they had been constantly exposed to the cold while hunting the dragon. Now, it felt as though it had been ages since they had a roof over their heads. Hanako, observing how free Ellis seemed, commented on how modest Ellis was. Ellis responded that Hanako was there with her. Hanako laid down beside Ellis, gently touching her hair, noticing that it had become coarse. She realized they would need to find more oils for Ellis's hair. Ellis glanced at her and remarked that Hanako must be tired from the hunt, suggesting that at least for tonight, she should rest in a proper inn, not a stable. Hanako, seeking comfort from Ellis, responded that she couldn't think of a better place to rest than by Ellis's side, then mentioned that they still haven't found Ellis's kin. Ellis thought that someone from the capital might know something, but the Gorn clan were nomads, and there was no telling how far they traveled on their giant legs. As for Hanako's sister, both of them had been struck by a train before Hanako had found herself in her current situation. Hanako remarked that if the so-called summoning from another world was truly a phenomenon, she expected her sister must be somewhere out there as well, Ellis hoped that one day Hanako would meet her sister. Hanako, encouraging her, said that she would definitely find her sister. She then mentioned that she was going to fetch some water and asked Ellis to get their beds ready in the meantime. As Hanako was getting the water, she heard a sound, and suddenly a man struck her from behind, knocking her to the ground. He laughed, saying that he had her now. There were several other men around, and one of them mentioned that they had been told Hanako was an otherworlder, and that she must have some sort of special powers or cheats. The man who had struck her commented that they should have brought more people than they did, but it wasn't necessary. This would be enough. Another man told him to hurry up and get on with the next part of the plan. Hanako suddenly remembered the past, where she had been in a church with her sister by her side. Hanako resisted, and her sister asked if she hated her or something like that. Hanako felt uncomfortable and replied that it seemed as if heaven was watching over them. Her sister then expressed that she wanted their bond to be eternal, as sisters. Hanako continued to resist, but her sister insisted that she wanted her, even if it meant defying both the sun and moon. Hanako tried to block out the memories, but suddenly Diaz appeared before her. He said that she had finally woken up. He apologized for being so heavy-handed, but admitted that he had been truly troubled by the idea that she might never wake up. After all, she was worth quite a lot. Hanako wondered about the price he mentioned, and Diaz explained that it would be all the better for him if her cheat wasn't just for combat or power, but if she had the ability to loop time. That would fetch an exceptional price. She asked if he was talking about human trafficking, and wasn't he supposed to be a servant of God, she asked. Diaz replied that the church needed money just like everyone else. She was more than enough to make up for the reward he would claim for defeating the ice dragon. He also added that her looks were impressive, and he'd be sure to enjoy her company before they reached the capital. Hanako then asked how he would explain his actions when he met his god. Diaz pondered about God, speaking with bitterness. He said that despite struggling to scrape out a pitiful existence, God only bestowed blessings on Hanako in a vase of vermin. How could he ever call someone like that a god? He asked Hanako to excuse his crude language. As they spoke, it seemed that Ellis had arrived. They looked outside the house to see Ellis standing in front of a giant, who was speaking to her. The giant introduced himself as being from the Gorn clan, and apologized, admitting it was wrong to have abandoned Ellis. He asked for her forgiveness, explaining that there had been a reason for leaving her behind when she was so young. Ellis stared at the giant, her vision blurry, and wondered if it was true. The giant confirmed, saying that they had no other choice at the time. Ellis's vision blurred even more, and all she could make out in the distance from the house was a boy standing in front of someone lying down. Diaz turned to Hanako, remarking that the giant had made a fool of him at the guild. He thought it was only right that he had her slaughtered in front of Hanako. Now he wanted to hear about the real power of Hanako, and he planned to make her tell him while he enjoyed himself. Ellis turned to the giant and said that if that's really the truth, she might have felt glad, but all she could feel now was how piss poor his acting was. He didn't even speak properly, and with that, she attacked him, and all the humans around them were shocked. Ellis used her skill to sever the hands of the men, even Diaz's. Hanako then used the bell to communicate with Ellis. Ellis, noticing the tension, advised Hanako to not put herself in harm's way. She then turned her attention to the men, ready to deal with them herself. Diaz turned to Hanako and taunted her, saying that if she killed him, she would become the enemy of the church and face divine punishment. Hanako responded coldly, saying that they both knew very well the truth about his kind, the gods, faith, bones, and promises. He was just eager to use them as a crude front, and everyone like him, devoid of virtue, was their enemy. Diaz flinched at the sight of a giant, visibly scared. Hanako's mind drifted back to her previous world, to a memory with her sister at a railway station. Her sister had asked her to stop thinking of them as sisters. Hanako was confused and asked why, to which her sister replied that she would be graduating next month, so it was time to stop the whole sister act. Hanako then reminded her that their bond as sisters was stronger than blood. Her sister, with a hint of frustration, told Hanako not to take things so seriously. Hanako, determined, said that for the sake of her sister, she had even defied heaven itself. Her sister responded with a sarcastic laugh, commenting that it was all a ridiculous show. Rich girls were sheltered, and Hanako, being so clueless, was totally out of touch. Hanako, undeterred, asked if that's the case, why did she make her as her sister? Her sister replied that it was all because all the other girls were doing it, and Hanako was rich, so it was useful to keep her around. But in truth, she found Hanako painfully naive and too straightforward, and dealing with her had been more of a chore than anything. She added that, looking back, she should have never bothered with the whole sister thing in the first place. Just then, as the train arrived, Hanako turned to her sister, pushing her and herself in the path of the train. Hanako stopped reminiscing and looked up to see Ellis approaching her, asking if she was hurt anywhere. Hanako assured her that she was fine, then asked about Ellis. Ellis confirmed that she was fine. Hanako then asked if the giant had been an imposter. Ellis nodded, saying that he wasn't one of her kin. Hanako, trying to lift her spirits, encouraged Ellis, telling her not to look so sad. She assured her that those who had abandoned them would surely be found by the two of them. Ellis agreed, smiling, and said that Hanako was braver and prouder than anyone, truly a giant among giants. The scene shifted to Hanako's sister, who was with another lady. The lady noticed that Hanako's sister seemed distracted and asked what was wrong. She replied that she had just gotten a strange chill. The lady teasingly asked if someone had managed to give a hero like her the chills. Was it some kind of evil spirit, or perhaps a big bad demon lord? Hanako's sister answered that it felt like something even bigger than that. As Hanako and Ellis were running through the street, people were scared to see Ellis. Hanako told her to put her down, and she jumped onto the roof of a house and announced that they were adventurers sent by the guild. She asked everyone to evacuate and leave everything to them. She explained that the enemies were to the north, mostly small monsters, and that they were no medium or large ones. She then asked Ellis to go and gather the people. A few armed townsfolk were shocked to see the giant. One man mentioned that he had heard of them, and said that since Hanako was the otherworlder commanding the joint forces, she was known as the smallest giant. Suddenly, monsters rushed forward to attack the citizens. A boy stepped up to fight the monsters using a weapon forge skill, slashing through them with his sword. He told a woman that he would handle the threat and urged her to leave the area. Hanako told Ellis that someone else was covering the northwest, and now they would take care of the north and northeast. She remembered earlier when she was sitting in the guild, hearing a man tell the guild members about the horde. They had never seen anything like it outside their village, and those who could fight were trying to hold them back. But no one knew how long they would last. One man mentioned that the village was on the other side of the mountain. Another man added that they didn't know how many people they could gather. Just then, Hanako stood up and said she was with the guild and might be able to help. The scene returned to the present, where Alice was attacking the monsters and noted that there were many more. She expressed appreciation for Hanako's efforts. Hanako replied that she only gave the orders. Alice was the one who had done all the work. Alice modestly said that it was nothing, but jumping over the mountain to reach the village had been quite the effort, and those monsters were no match for her. She was crushing them all with her legs. Then she mentioned the boy who had also fought the monsters. People were calling the boy a hero, and a man said he didn't know what they would have done without him. As the village chief, he thanked the boy and expressed relief that everybody was safe. He then showed the way to a banquet being held in the boy's honor. Alice remarked that the boy was treated differently from both her and Hanako. They only did it for the money, and she asked if it was because she was a foreigner. Hanako then brought up the hero title and asked if it was only given to those who were truly brave. Alice pondered this and asked if it was Hanako's first time seeing the title used. She explained that the hero title was special, originally given to people from the other world. It was what the Demon King had called the Otherworlders, and over time, it became a common term. Otherworlders always arrived with special abilities, and calling them hero made them happy and more willing to respond. This could be seen as the cunningness of the world's inhabitants. Hanako realized that the boy was also an Otherworlder, just like her. On one side, people were holding a banquet for the boy, while on the other, Ellis and Hanako were busy clearing the destruction. Hanako called out to Ellis, asking her to be careful while moving the rubble. Ellis agreed. The hero then approached, saying so she was here, and since she was not at the banquet, he came to look for her. She replied that cleaning up the battlefield was a part of the request that they had accepted. The boy glanced at her clothes and asked if she was from Japan. When she mentioned her sister Hidaka, he apologized, saying that he had never heard of that name. It was his first time encountering a giant, so he couldn't be of much help. Hanako reassured him that it was fine and he didn't have to worry about it, since she had been in that world for 2 years and still hadn't found the slightest clue. The boy said he had arrived there half a year ago. On his way home from work, he saw a girl nearly get run over by a truck, so he lunged forward to save her. When he got up, he found himself in that world. It felt so unreal, like being reincarnated into a land of swords and magic, straight out of a light novel. Hanako wondered what light novels were, asking about the magic and stories. He asked if she had never read any, like manga or novels. She apologized, saying that she was a bit sheltered and lacked knowledge. He replied that it wasn't like that and told her not to worry. Then he noticed Hanako only had one hand. He said her life must have really been tough. He didn't react strangely and asked why she felt that way. She replied that her sister had said something unforgivable to her, but murder was still murder and God would not forgive it. She was completely different from the boy. She was a sinner. Just then another boy arrived. His condition wasn't good, and he spoke about the state of a child. Hanako rushed ahead. When they arrived, they saw many people who had been killed, and Hanako used a healing potion on one of the injured. The hero was shocked by the scene. The injured child was screaming for his mother, with both legs and hands severed. Hanako asked about the child's mother, and the boy explained that the child had recently come to the village without any parents. Most people there were either homeless or alone, which is why they were sent to the front lines first. The hero mentioned that the chief hadn't told him about any of this. As the injured child cried for his mother, Hanako moved to embrace him. The boy, calling out for mom, was met by Hanako, who agreed by acting as his mother. He asked if it was really her and questioned why she had left him, saying he had always been waiting for her. The hero and Ellis watched from a distance. Hanako then apologized, assuring him that she would never leave him again. She explained that it had been so dark and that she had felt cold and scared. She told him not to worry and that he would meet God soon. He was curious about this and asked what she meant. She told him it was warm on the other side, filled with plenty of food and surrounded by kind people, a place where everyone would be safe. He replied that if such a place really existed, he would love to go there. With his last words, he thanked her and passed away in her arms. Hanako reassured him, saying whether it was God or heaven, it would surely be real and he would definitely meet God. However, she could not go because of the sins she had committed, but for him, she believed he would reach God without a doubt. As she sat there, another injured boy remarked that Hanako was covered in blood and that he would find a cloth for her. She stopped him, saying she didn't need it and still had work to do. She called herself a sinner, murderer, and now a liar. The hero denies this, but Hanako remains silent. Just then, the chief arrived, calling out to the hero, warning that the situation was dire and that the second wave was approaching. The hero pointed to the injured, asking how many of them weren't citizens. The chief hesitated, and the hero then declared that he would no longer help people who were capable of such cruelty. The chief questioned what the otherworlders knew, and why the hero thought they had come to the village. Among them were murderers, thieves, and criminals, all trying to escape the law. Yet, the chief had allowed them to stay as citizens, so we wondered what was wrong with putting them to use in such a critical moment. Ellis then called out to Hanako, and Hanako responded, telling her they needed to get moving to fight the second wave. Upon hearing this, the chief stepped forward to shake Hanako's hand, thanking her and acknowledging that, as he had suspected, he could only trust the adventurers. She calmly responded that it was part of her job. Ellis then handed her a cloth, suggesting she wipe herself off first. Hanako replied that there was no need, that she didn't mind the blood. Ellis responded that that's not what she meant, but because she touched something filthy. The chief was shocked by this statement. Hanako, cleaning her hands, apologized to the chief, explaining that Ellis wasn't very good at being subtle. She then moved ahead, telling Ellis, "Let's go, we need to fight." He then added that if the monsters attacked, those who were injured would be the last to leave. That child would be going to where God was, and she had hoped his journey would be a peaceful one, so they needed to obliterate all the monsters. During the battle, they saw the hero was helping as well, and Hanako thanked him for his assistance. He replied that if she truly was a sinner, murderer, and liar, she wouldn't have held that child's hand, nor would she have saved the villagers. Hanako responded that she was simply doing her job. But he was right that guiding them toward a better way of life, one worth living, was a responsibility she bore as an older sister. He then asked what she would do after finding her sister, and whether, even if she reincarnated, Hanako would still seek revenge. She wasn't sure what she would do after finding her sister, whether she would apologize, kill her, or if her sister would kill her instead. But if she never found her and came to terms with it, she would never be able to accept it, and she believed neither would her sister. After completing their mission, Hanako and Ellis left the area. As Hanako sat on Ellis' shoulder, she reflected that she had killed her own sister and lied to a dying boy. Yet she still said she would present a life worth living. Ellis responded that, as a giant, she didn't fully understand what was right or wrong for humans, but for giants, killing those who dishonored them was considered commendable. She was certain that the boy had found redemption when he saw his mother in the end. Ellis then recalled a moment from her past, when she had been scolded for being useless and weak. However, because they were siblings, they tolerated her. As they continued forward, they told her to just focus on her job, not to think about anything else and not bring shame upon them. She felt exhausted and begged for them to just wait for her. Just then, a boy approached her, snapping her back into the present, and asked what she was doing there. She was surprised by the question and explained that she was doing laundry. He glanced at her giant clothes and remarked that she certainly had a lot to wash. Then he noticed Hanako sleeping on Ellis' shoulder. Ellis motioned for him to be quiet, as Hanako had fallen asleep while waiting for the clothes to dry. The boy then asked if he could help by starting a fire to speed up the drying process. Ellis was startled and asked if he knew how to use magic. He nodded and explained that his mother told him that he possessed a special talent. Ellis was amazed and replied that those who could use magic were incredibly rare, numbering only in the several thousands. The boy showed her a tattoo on his arm, saying that the larger it was, the stronger the magic. Normally people only had such tattoos on their hands, but his was on his arm as well. His teacher told him that he could become a great sorcerer. She asked if he had any plans to become one. He nodded, explaining that he had many siblings, and for their sake, he wanted to become an amazing sorcerer so everyone could live happily. She smiled and told him that was nice, reminding him to be sure to cherish his siblings. A little while later, Ellis and Hanako arrived at the guild and informed the members that they were leaving the town. Hanako continued, saying she had gathered enough information and money and that she had caused quite a bit of trouble. The man mentioned the church, and Hanako responded that she wasn't concerned, but she had heard that the army pursuers had been mobilized. Sarah, another adventurer sitting nearby, grumbled that the church people were annoying. Peter added that they used really powerful weapons, and he had heard that they were ancient relics or something. Sarah replied that the church was the most profitable organization in the world, and that despite that, they were still run by human supremacists who looked down on demi-humans, which was awful. Hanako wondered aloud about the ancient relics. Then Ellis took out a cross and asked if this is what they meant. The guild members were shocked, asking if that was the Holy Knight's weapon and why Ellis had it. Ellis replied that it didn't fit with the rest of the belongings when they buried the body, so she decided to keep it for herself. She also thought it could probably sell for a good price. Peter and Sarah were shocked to hear they wanted to sell it. The guild man responded that they didn't deal with that kind of stuff and didn't want the church snooping around. Ellis asked if it was really an ancient relic, though it didn't feel very powerful to her. Just as she turned it upside down, a blast released from it, shattering the roof and shooting so high into the sky that people could see it from a distance. Ellis quickly reacted and saved Hanako from some falling debris. Hanako commented that the church seemed quite powerful. Peter remarked that they were indeed powerful, and he was thankful to the gods that the church hadn't used that weapon on them. Hanako expressed her gratitude that the church had resorted to more twisted methods, and as she had mentioned before, she and her sister were really grateful for the care that they had received during their stay in the town. She then told everyone to enjoy themselves, as she and Ellis would take care of the bills. They all cheered and thanked her for that. Hanako turned to the guildman and assured him that she would pay for the repair cost of the roof as well. The man acknowledged that she was doing them a huge favor. Ellis stated that the army pursuers were just as powerful as the knights from the church. Peter asked if they would be fine. Hanako replied that it would be a problem if she were alone, but she had a younger sister who she was incredibly proud of. As she looked at Ellis's emotions overwhelmed her and she began to cry. She apologized to Hanako, feeling like a failure for leading her into danger, getting her captured, and still depending on her. A few of the adventurers remarked that Ellis really cried a lot. Hanako, wiping away a water droplet from her hand, mentioned that she should be the one apologizing. She hadn't been able to do anything on her own and always had to rely on Ellis. Hanako realized she hadn't even stopped Ellis from crying and felt she was truly useless as an older sister.